All right, well, it seems the United States desperately wants war with Iran. So how will they get it? Well, there's two ways they'll likely get it. They need you to be able to tie Hamas terrorists, of course, to Iran. We need to be able to make that connection, right? That Iran is fully invested in Hamas, and therefore we see no daylight between the two of them. And also we need to scare Americans into thinking that Hamas is coming for you. We need to scare Europeans. Hamas is coming for you next. Here's the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, like right on cue. Full exclusive. Hamas fighters trained in Iran before the October 7th attacks.
Now, we should have known because days after the October 7th attacks, we were told that U.S. officials said they thought that Iran was connected to this story, but they didn't have proof yet. So they were crafting the narrative right in front of us. So we knew we would expect them to at least say something rather official that the media would regurgitate for them. Go ahead.
Yeah. And as you can see there, highlighted on the screen there, according to anonymous sources familiar with the matter and familiar with intelligence related to the assault is who says this, right? According to people familiar with intelligence related to the assault. Okay, who are these mysterious anonymous people, by the way?
The people who said they would find this information in the first place.
Right.
We're going to find it. Can we walk into a closet and you say it to me?
So it's not enough, though, for Hamas just to train in Iran and for the U.S. to go to war. That's a huge leap, right? No, they need Iran or Hamas attacking American ships and American assets to really rally the American people. Otherwise, you're not going to put yellow ribbons on your trees, right? And say, we're against Iran, we're against Hamas. Let's rally up like we did during Desert Storm, right? And we'll have like Lee Greenwood come out and sing American songs, and bald eagles will be flying around and all of that. We need that, right? We need something to attack us in order for us to be rallied against it. To understand how we pull this off, though, it's worth going back to the year 1898. Do you remember it? Well,
not as such.
In February of 1898, the USS Maine was destroyed. The United States battleship, the USS Maine, exploded in the then Spanish-controlled Havana harbor. The explosion, of course, hit the newspapers, was heavily publicized by newspaper mogul William Randolph Hearst, and it rallied America to war against Spain. And it led to the United States seizing Cuba, Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and of course, the term "Remember the Maine" became the rallying cry for Americans that were outraged that Spain would blow up our ship. Remember the Maine. Turns out that many historians believe the Spanish had nothing at all to do with the explosion of the Maine. In fact, the munitions perhaps exploded on the ship. That's what historians believe actually did happen. The Spanish had nothing to do with it. But it doesn't matter, because that lie had already been successfully planted. William Randolph Hearst published it in the newspapers, and Americans remembered the Maine. Down with those Spanish. But this was not an isolated incident, of course, because the declassified CIA documents from the 1960s specifically outline how to carry out false flag tactics to create what the CIA described as, quote, "Remember the Maine incident." You can read it right here in the CIA's own documents. We need to create a, quote, "Remember the Maine incident" by the CIA. The plans by the CIA show how they would intentionally blow up a United States ship to start a war with a communist country. You can read the CIA's documents yourself. They are public. This is a blueprint for how to carry out a false flag attack. This week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned that Iran, it better not attack any of our ships that are currently patrolling the waters near Iran. You better not attack our ships. Because you know what? Any attack on American forces from Iran or its proxies would lead to our retaliation. So meanwhile, false flag alert number 2, are we about to see a chemical weapons attack? We've got a big update on this story we first brought you on Tuesday. Israel is apparently delaying their initial invasion of Gaza because the U.S. has asked them to. Again, the Wall Street Journal. Here's the cover story of the Wall Street Journal. Israel agrees to U.S. request to delay invasion of Gaza. And it specifically talks about how we want to get our air defense systems in place so we can place our air defenses in the region to protect U.S. troops, according to U.S. officials and people familiar with the Israeli planning of this.
Okay. So we're being told they're delaying the ground invasion. At the same time, we're being told that they're doing targeted tank raids. So this is not the full thing yet, right?
It's a preview.
But we still can sort of play a game where we go in and pretend that we can precisely just remove the targets we want.
Right.
So those
targeted strikes.
Right. Like,
which don't exist.
No, not at all. It's like a
precision
like
strikes.
A game of operation.
I
you could just
love the
go
fact
in.
that
Yeah.
I love the fact that in this proxy war we can be like, can you guys hang on a second while we get ready? Like,
Yeah.
And everybody's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just take your
if
time.
that doesn't tell you like how proxy this is, like if we can get both sides to be like, hold off for a couple days until we get set up. We're still setting up. And they're like, okay, no problem.
Yeah, take
Just
your
sitting
time.
there looking at their watch, waiting. Take your time.
It's amazing.
Just need to get my meeting notes in order.
So is this story true? You know, this Wall Street Journal piece that the U.S. wants to get its air defense system set up first so that before Israel invades? Is that true, or is that BS? You know, part of a false flag story. You be the judge of it. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're just giving you the information as we see it. It's our job here to call out the BS, though, and warn you about it when a collaboration seems like it's unfolding with all of the mainstream media, like Remember the Maine and William Randolph Hearst's newspapers, and all of the minions underneath William Randolph Hearst that would publish all of the same stuff and echo those exact same sentiments in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. This is how it's happening today. It's the same playbook over 125 years later. So our job here is to call out this BS. You can do with it what you want in this information, but let's give you some context if you missed our coverage on Tuesday. I encourage you to go back and watch that, though. Journalist Vanessa Beeley had tipped me off early Tuesday morning that it appears the United States, the UK intelligence, and Israeli intelligence are putting out this story of a potential false flag. The story started popping up in Western media circles that have ties to the MI6 and the CIA. The story is this, that Hamas has chemical weapons that they got from their pals over at Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda apparently shared the recipes with Hamas, and they are prepping these chemical weapons in the tunnels under Gaza. These Hamas terrorists are prepping these chemical weapons in the tunnels under Gaza. You follow this logic, right? How do we know this? Well, because conveniently the president of Israel says they found chemical weapons on captured Hamas soldiers. They found the chemical recipes. They were carrying these around, and he went on Sky News to show us the laminated recipes they found.
This is material which was found on the body of one of those sadistic villains. It's Al-Qaeda material, official Al-Qaeda material. We're dealing with ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas. This is what we're dealing with. And in this material, there were instructions how to produce chemical weapons. It speaks about arson, and it speaks about various chemicals that come out and produce chemical weapons. Simple as that.
So these Hamas fighters were just walking around with the chemical recipe cards on them, like they're trading Gordon Ramsay chicken pot pie recipes.
Yeah, and that was used a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, and it says Al-Qaeda in English,
right.
Or, it's written out and it's printed out nicely, and this is what we have here.
That's my favorite part, is that it's that Al-Qaeda took the time to clearly label their branding.
Right.
It's like it clearly says Al-Qaeda in big bold letters right across the top.
Like a criminal, it goes into to carry out a crime and then writes their name on the wall, I guess. So according to reports, that's the fault.
Sorry, I was going to say that has the bag of money with the big dollar sign right on it, so that you know that they're a thief. Yeah,
exactly. So according to these reports, the false flag part, again, it's Colin Powell holding up a vial of anthrax, justifying an invasion of Iraq because Saddam Hussein has chemical weapons of mass destruction.
That's exactly the vision that came to mind.
Yeah. I've got this vial.
I've seen this. I've been here before. Deja vu.
Yeah, it's all over again, and it worked. I mean, the reason they're pulling this thing out again, in my opinion, is because it worked once before. But we now have reports that the United States is planning to use our own illegal chemical weapons in response to flood these tunnels to suffocate them under the supervision of U.S. Special Forces. Well, last night, more confirmation of this. And as we were set to go to air here, Even more confirmation of this now being reported. Eye on the Middle East is reporting that they will flood Hamas tunnels with nerve gas under U.S. Navy supervision. Israel will flood Hamas tunnels with nerve gas under U.S. Navy supervision. Source tells Middle East Eye. Reports of delayed ground invasion, part of a misinformation campaign designed to obtain element of surprise in a multi-pronged attack.
Well, now what they're calling these are sponge bombs, not to be confused with sponge bobs, that these are things that can fight these underground tunnels. And in fact, The Guardian reporting that they sometimes, if they're mishandled, it can blind the Israeli soldiers that are handling them. So that's pretty high risk.
The plan hinges on, according to Eye on the
Sorry,
Middle
the Telegraph, not The Guardian.
Okay.
Sorry.
According to the Middle East Eye cannot independently verify the information in this leak, but Israel and the U.S. hope to achieve the element of surprise in order to penetrate Hamas tunnels, rescue an estimated 220 hostages, and kill thousands of soldiers belonging to Hamas Al-Qassam brigades, the source said, noting that the information they received came from a leak originating in the United States. The source also added that U.S. Delta Force will oversee large quantities of nerve gas being pumped into these Hamas tunnels, capable of paralyzing the bodily movement for a period of time between 6 and 12 hours.
Okay, that's not what a sponge bomb is. A sponge bomb is something different. But that also was reported by the Telegraph, that sponge bombs are Israel's new secret weapon that they were intending to. It's something that it's like a foam that bursts open and then hardens.
Okay. Like you would use an insulation in a house, in a new construction house.
And are the hostages? The hostages are immune to chemical weapons.
Apparently, Israeli hostages are immune to these chemical weapons, or they're going to be given like gas masks ahead of time, or they'll be rendered like motionless, so they'll be fine, and we'll just pick them up and bring these 200 hostages back home to Israel, and they'll be fine and safe. Like, what's going to happen to these people? Like, it's going to be like some sort of precision strike that's going to just hinder, and it's only going to take out Hamas, but it'll save the Israeli hostages? Like, how is this going to happen? So civilians, again, the whole reason we're covering this story is because civilians are going to be killed. Israeli civilians, Palestinian civilians, under the guise of using nerve gas to root out people in these tunnels. So the reason we're doing this story is so that this doesn't happen. If we can draw attention to it and make people aware of this false flag operation, hopefully it stops. According to the report, U.S. Special Forces are already in Israel and will help coordinate this nerve agent attack on the tunnels. You might be saying that's a conspiracy theory. U.S. Special Forces are not in Israel. U.S. doesn't have special forces there. Of course they don't. That's a conspiracy theory. But we do. In fact, last week, the White House quickly deleted a tweet that they inadvertently posted. Actually, it was an Instagram post, and it showed President Biden shaking hands with and meeting with U.S. Special Forces in Israel. Here's the photo confirmation from the White House, shaking hands with U.S. Special Forces. The White House then quickly deleted this post. What you're looking at here are U.S. Delta Force and the elite Sea Lion team, shaking hands with them. The White House exposed them, basically doxed them. And the White House 1 hour later deleted the post. So yes, U.S. Special Forces are in fact there. And apparently, according to these reports, they will be the ones carrying out the usage of these nerve agents. So that would be a war crime under the Geneva Convention, of course. The United States using a nerve agent chemical weapon to attack Gaza. That's the very thing we faked about Saddam Hussein, saying we can't allow weapons of mass destruction to be used, so we need to go in and invade. Babies in incubators, you know? So that's what's being pushed right now. And the mainstream media, of course, is pushing it too. You saw here's Fox News and Sky News, of course, covering it as well. Featuring, here's the son of one of Hamas's co-founders, Mossab Hassan Youssef, which I played this the other day. But here he openly calls for the gassing of people in these tunnels.
And a ground incursion is about to happen. Would you recommend Israel do this? And what will they find when they go in?
Okay, first of all, we need to evacuate civilians as much as we can. You know, this is an ugly war, and Israel did not start it. Hamas did. First of all, we need to encourage civilians to go into Egypt, possibly women and children, maybe men over 50 years old. These need to get out of the picture. Then the strip need to be cut 2 pieces, north and south, 2 parts. The northern part, this is where most of the tunnels are. We need to have a solid siege, okay, for long enough to deplete the enemy and to starve them. After that, we may need to explore using gas. This is sounds horrible, but I don't see any other option. The tunnels are interconnected, and gas could be one of the solutions, but this has to be in the right time.
So gas. The irony, using gas to root people out. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So again, is this a false flag? Are we about to see this unfold? We want to bring it to your attention. You can do with the information as you please. Again, this being reported from a couple of different sources now. So here we go. Let's keep an eye on this as Israel starts this initial incursion.
I feel like we learned this lesson in World War II, or sorry, World War One. Was it World War One or World War II I think it was World War II, wasn't it? With all the mustard
trench
gas?
warfare. We
Both,
stopped
really.
using mustard gas in World War, after World War One because of how horrific it was, right? So that's part of the, that's part of our war terms now. We don't use this stuff.
This is like new and improved chemical weapons too. This is
Right.
it's not like we stopped making new chemical weapons in World War One, and we're like, no, this is the standard. No, we've been improving on it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is absolutely barbaric to the nth degree. I mean, this is just absolute craziness.
Yeah.
It's awful. And, again, I the civilians is what I'm focused on here. And so these, the Israeli hostages, which appear to be, I don't know what's going to happen with them, the Israeli hostages that are there, what's going to happen to innocent families and Palestinians who live in this area and who aren't able to leave. And if we're just going to keep gas contained to a specific spot, which is a war crime to begin with, but we're going to keep it contained to a specific spot to root out the people in these tunnels. This is 2023.
Yeah. And where have we had this stuff, right? Because we're always calling out countries for having stockpiles of dangerous weapons. So where have these been? I'm just curious.
Were they stored in Ukraine at the bioweapons labs in Ukraine?
Right. Where
Right. Which is, by the way, what Putin said.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, take that with a grain of salt, I guess, if you don't believe it. But why were these 46 bioweapons labs in Ukraine? And the Russian government has said that the United States was actually using and preparing chemical weapons at these labs. And we needed a full investigation from the United Nations, called for it. Mm-hmm. And for the, I don't know if it was the OPCW in the United Nations arm to go and investigate what was being produced in these weapons labs in Ukraine.
Right.
I'd love to know.
Well,
information is power.
The U.S. Congress in the early 80s, the U.S. Congress was voting on whether or not we should continue to make chemical weapons. This is the early 80s. And they were a split Congress, and it was actually Vice President Bush Sr., was the deciding vote that decided that we'll continue to make chemical weapons, and we've been doing it ever since. So we've never really stopped.
Former head of the CIA, George H.W. Bush. King of the deep state there, that's for sure. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.